This is Jessica, Oracle of the South. Join me tonight as we enter the portal into the world of cryptids, Bigfoot, aliens, UFOs, ghosts, and interdimensionals. Hey, y'all. Welcome into the portal. I'm Jessica, and I am really glad you guys are here with me tonight. I have an amazing guest again for you guys. I've got John Vandeventer here with me, who is an author of the Relics series and has some really cool stories that he's going to tell us tonight. So before we begin, I would love for you guys to go follow me, the Cryptid Huntress, on social media. I'm pretty much on every social media site. And also I've got Into the Portal _Jessica and War Woman Goods. So if you guys would like to support my show and things that I'm doing right now with all my different projects I've been working on, go to War Woman Goods on Etsy and buy some Native American turquoise. It really helps me out. Also, I will be speaking at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference in Clayton on April 16th. That's in a couple of weeks. I am really looking forward to that. So if you guys haven't gotten your tickets yet, go to the georgiafootconference.org and get your tickets, okay? All right. Also, I got a lot of friends that are going to be speaking at the Bama Bigfoot Conference. So if you guys are going to be free on June the 10th and the 11th, y'all meet us at the Bama Bigfoot Conference, okay? It's going to be in Oxford, Alabama. Okay. Well, I am going to introduce my guest tonight. I have John Vandeventer here, who is born and raised in Dallas, Texas. But he was born in Dallas and raised in Plano, Texas. He has a lifelong fascination with military aircraft, which he developed as a young boy. The fascination led him to serve in the U.S. Air Force for 16 years. His fascination for military aircraft led him to another lifelong fascination with UFOs. So he and I have a little bit in common there. All right. So he wrote a book called Relics, a Myth You Don't Believe and a Reality You Won't Survive. That was his first attempt at writing a novel, which he made a second edition of last year. And it was called Relics, The Dark Autumn, which I just finished today. Let me tell y'all, this is a book that you can't put down. And it's about Sasquatch and all that fun stuff that I like. Okay. So, he wrote a second book, Relics, don't want to get this name wrong, okay? The Honobia, okay, Honobia Remnant. It's spelled like Honobia, okay? So I got to give myself some credit there. The Honobia Remnant is the sequel to the first book and a second in a planned trilogy. So there's a third one coming out, you guys. But it's basically another Sasquatch story, but it brings in more of his interest in the military and aviation and the UFO phenomenon. All right. It's been 5 years in the making. Okay. But yeah, he's about to complete it. He's working on that third book right now. So John has participated in the Honobia Bigfoot Festival, and he actually emceed the event last year. With a bunch of big, well-known names. Okay, so he's been studying Bigfoot for a while, and let me tell you, the book series, you would think he's got a little insider information on these things. Okay, so I'm going to bring up John. Let's see. I'll bring up John. Hey, John. Welcome into the portal.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hey, thank you for being here. I know that we talk pretty often. You know, we communicate on social media, but it was such a pleasure getting to meet you today, especially after finishing your book this morning. So,
well, I'm glad you liked the book. I'm really thrilled.
I love it, and I think that a lot of people in the Bigfooting community would really, profit off of reading this book, because it really it parallels what I experience in the field. Okay. So I have a lot of experience with some of the stuff, and I don't want to give the book away. So I don't, I'll let you talk about it so that I don't give anything away. Okay. But it starts off with a bang. Okay. And then it goes, you're kind of the Sasquatch and the human interaction in your book. It can get a little violent and crazy and nail biter. That's all I can say. Okay. And I just appreciated that from the human Sasquatch interaction to the government cover-ups to biker gangs and small town Sasquatch sightings and things like that. So yeah, tell me how you got interested in writing a series about Sasquatch.
Well, actually, I was never interested in being a writer. A friend he wanted me to write a short story, and why he chose me, I don't know. I won't go into how that all happened because it's kind of a long story. But anyway, he had a production company. He wanted a short story that he could make into like a 30-minute little film. And then he got a big contract out in Los Angeles. So that took priority. And he said, I'm not going to do the Bigfoot thing. I was kind of relieved and set it aside. Well, my sister had seen it, and we were real close. She was 9 years older than me. She's kind of a mother figure. I never knew my mother, and Molly was it. So she kept pestering me, and I never knew why, but she wanted me to make it into a novel. And so finally I relented, and I made it into a novel, and I was looking for a site or a location for the story. So I really didn't know anything about Bigfoot. Like you mentioned earlier, I was interested in UFOs most of my life. I always thought Bigfoot was fascinating and a cool thing, but I'd never really read anything about it or anything like that. I started buying books and listening to every podcast I could. About that time I was doing this, David Paulides came out with his Missing 411 series, and I bought his Bigfoot books and some of Ron Moorhead's. And I was just getting more and more fascinated with the subject. And I'm just reading more and listening more. And I thought, man, this is really cool. I always just assumed it was some big hairy thing that you'd see and it'd run, and that was it. And I started reading about all these encounters and so many people from so many different walks of life. And I just became fascinated. Then I started finding, reasons there might be a government cover-up, alleged government cover-ups, small town politics coming into play in places where there have been sightings, military involvement, UFOs showing up at the same time people had a Sasquatch encounter. And I was just like, man, if I'm going to write a book, I want all this stuff in the book. And that's why it came out to be so large. It took so long to write. But I just fell in love with the subject, and it opened my eyes to a lot of other things. I've met some really wonderful people, but yeah, I just kind of fell into it, Jessica. It really wasn't planned on my part. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, well, there are no coincidences, John. Okay, so I really have I've seen parallels in a lot of the things that are in your book. And you even touch on things like how the Bigfoots are migrating, the Sasquatches migrate, and you got really into the local lore and history of the area where you live now. And I thought that was really cool, and especially with the Native American aspect, and how they what are they call them, Okla Cheetos, right? The Okla Cheeto. I thought that was really cool. Now, did you actually base all this on true?
No, I actually, researched that, and that is the name, that and Champagne. And now there's some other names for it too. Most of my neighbors on the road I live on are Choctaw, and I have one good friend that lives kind of across the road from me. And I've heard that, this group of Choctaw folks may use Okla Cheeto. A group, to the north up, say near Spiro or someplace like that, they may have another name for them, so yeah, but those are accepted names by some tribes in the Choctaw tribe.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to speak for myself. I have always felt like the state parks and the national park rangers know that there are Bigfoots and Sasquatches on the land where they're they're regional areas, all these national parks. I just have a sneaking suspicion somebody knows they're out there, right? Because a lot of times roads will be shut down, and and I know they shut down roads for controlled burns and things like that, but in the very active areas that my team researches, those roads get shut down pretty often. Okay. So that's kind of something that your book touches on a little bit. And, my team has actually experienced men that look they were in the SWAT team coming out of the woods, with guns and armor on and all that stuff. So stuff like that's kind of touch on that in your book a little bit too. So I was wondering if you just had, that's what made me feel like you had an insider information, because I was like, I don't know if that's something that a lot of people know about. I don't know if a lot of people have encountered those,
Well,
special forces people in the woods.
yeah, well, like I say, I've picked that up from stories I've heard on podcasts. Of course, I didn't put anything verbatim what I've heard or the things I've picked up on. It's I've heard rumors, but I have heard it. I've seen it on websites, where people have made have brought it up in discussion and things. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to have this, I want to have it all. So I made sure to include that too. And I thought it added a lot to the story. But yeah, see, now here we go. You said you've seen that yourself. So
well, I haven't seen it, but my team has. Some of the guys on my team, and they've talked about it on my show before, actually. So yeah, it happened. It happened, and also there's something that you put in your book about the siege of Honobia, right? That's an actual event? Because I looked it up on BFRO's website today, and I wasn't shocked that it was actually an actual event, but I was pretty impressed that you would put that in your book, and that was something that I could reference and go and look at, and that actually happened.
right.
What do you know about that?
I'll put your podcast link on it. Well, the funny thing is, when I started writing a book, I didn't really know that Bigfoot Sasquatch was all over the United States. Like everybody that has a passing interest or no interest, I thought it was all in the Pacific Northwest. And I heard that, and I thought, man, that's Oklahoma. Where is that in Oklahoma? And I thought, oh, heck, man, that's only 3 hours away. And so I chose this area for the setting. But like I was telling you earlier, Honobia here, we have a little store, but they don't have gas pumps. They got a little grill.
Oh,
But
really?
if you want gas, you got to go 17 miles either to Talahena to the north or Smithville to the east. And if you want to go grocery shopping, unless you want to use Dollar General, if you want a big store like a Walmart or something, the closest one is 43 miles, I think, down in Broken Bow. So we're kind of secluded. So I couldn't use Honobia because I needed a police department, I needed a hospital, I needed infrastructure. So I was just looking at a map, and I just put my finger on Talahena. So Talahena is the setting for the first book. And I remember Pam's Hateful Hussy Diner from the book.
Yeah. Oh, right.
That's an actual place. And
no, that's an actual place too. What a funny name for a diner. I love that.
I had breakfast there with a couple of friends this morning. So yes. And
yeah, I noticed that Sam was having breakfast there a lot. So the characters, they like to eat there.
Breakfast. Yeah. Yeah, they love to eat there. But yeah, that's an actual place. And it was funny because about the first 7-8 months I was writing the book, I was just using Google Earth to look at everything up here.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how I was writing the book. And then one day I thought, I need to go up there and look around and make sure it looks how I'm describing it. And yeah, I did. Google Earth did a great job. It was funny. I was able to just drive around Talahena. It's not a big town, but I always knew where I was because I've been writing about it for 8 months. So it was pretty funny. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the small town, so it's probably pretty typical of a small town if there's a local legend of a Bigfoot there, and if people were to start having Bigfoot sightings, you can see how camera crews want to come in there, and shows on television want to come start filming there. As in, even there was a lot of press about Portlock, Alaska for a while, and they sent a crew up there, and they've been doing TV shows up there now. So that's kind of something that you touch on in your book a little bit. I mean, having Sasquatches really throws a town out of whack a little bit. The normal everyday. And it can be profitable for town.
The community was under stress in my book. They had a lot of stress.
They did.
And but funny you mentioned that. We just had a Discovery film crew here back in October, November, doing a Bigfoot program or filming a Bigfoot program here in Honobia.
Wow.
So,
I mean, you can imagine because, yeah, you guys have a lot of Bigfoot activity there. Just Oklahoma in general has a lot of activity. So I don't know why it's so concentrated there, but you guys have seem to have a lot.
well,
Enough. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna. It's the terrain, like you when you read my bio. I was born in Dallas, and I grew up in Plano, about 20 miles north of Dallas. Anytime we went to Oklahoma, it was west of here, and it was pretty flat. It was what you would expect Oklahoma to be, and I had no idea they had all these mountains and stuff. I mean, I live between two little mountain ranges on a mile-wide valley, and to my north is the Kiamichi Mountains, and then another range of the Kiamichi Mountains to my south. Now, if you go over the mountains and go about 7 miles, you're in Talahina. So they got the Kiamichi Mountains to their south and the Winding Stair. You hit them about 7 miles if you go northeast. So I was amazed there was all these mountains here first time I came up.
Wow.
And it's
Yeah.
very sparsely populated. There's not a lot of people out here.
It sounds like it was such small towns, and you got a stoplight, and you got to drive how many miles to get to the Walmart?
43 down
But
in Broken. And that's not even a big Walmart. That's a little one. So
it's the small. It's not a superstore, huh?
no, it's not a superstore. It's an old one.
Well, I
Yeah.
can see how some towns would like to profit off of that for tourism, right? And
Right.
to make money. And you guys have a big Bigfoot festival out there every year. Am I right?
Yeah, first weekend in October every year, they have a Bigfoot festival here.
Oh, I bet that's fun. I bet everybody goes too, right?
Catalina's starting to they're doing more Bigfoot themed stuff. But they're a big tourist attraction in the spring and the fall. We get really beautiful fall colors up here, and the roads are winding. It's perfect. Get a lot of motorcycle riders up here, and people come touring on their bikes. And yeah, fall and spring tourism's a big thing here.
Yeah. Well, I can see also why your state legislators like to bring attention to the Bigfoot and the Sasquatch in your state, right? Because there's a
Right.
very controversial House bill that was written a couple of years ago. I believe it was either 2019 or maybe it was last year. It was House Bill, let's see, 1648. That was just last year. And this was to make a hunting season of Bigfoot and Sasquatch in Oklahoma. How did you feel about that?
Well, my first reaction was that's not real smart because you got guys with guns out looking for something on two legs, which is going to be other guys with guns. And I
Yeah.
didn't think it was too good of an idea. And I don't, to be honest, um, my opinion on if you want to encounter Bigfoot, mind your own business because that's the only way I've been able to do it. It's just a weird thing that happens. But like
Yeah.
anytime I'm out physically looking, I won't find anything. I won't find a track. I won't find vegetation, broken branches, or anything like that. But if I forget about it and just get on with my life for about 6 or 8 months, all of a sudden, bang, something happens. And now I know there's some people that come out here that seem to have this gift to bring them in or find them. I don't
Mhm.
have that. I just kind of have to trip over one. So
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been researching Bigfoot for 11 years, and I've never seen one up close, like where I could see its face. I've
right.
experienced them and seen them from afar, and possibly been tripped up by one, but there was nothing there. So it was something invisible. So I'm not sure, but some people are just luckier than others, I guess, because
Well, I think my first
yeah.
sighting was pure luck. I
Tell me
I
about it.
well, it's kind of funny because I'd been the weekend. It was 2018. We've been here about 3 months, and I'd gone with a group of researchers down to Brown Springs, Oklahoma. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
Oh, I
it's
know all about Brown Springs.
yeah. Well,
I've heard.
it's supposed to be so scary, and it's scary in
Yeah.
the daytime. And funny thing, I'd gone there once before, and I'd taken my youngest son Trevor, and then my second oldest son Thomas, who he lost his legs in Iraq, so he's in a wheelchair. And I felt, I thought, well, this place is supposed to be bad. I don't want to leave Thomas in the truck,
Yeah.
and I'm worried. He's like, no, go ahead. He just bought a new Judge pistol. He goes, maybe I'll get a chance to use it, So
Oh, the judge.
okay.
Yeah, that I'd feel
So
safe with one of those too.
Trevor's like, yeah. So Trevor and I, we walked around for an hour or so, never found anything. I never got an eerie feeling. But I went back there the weekend. I think it was the 4th and 5th of August in 2018 with a group of researchers. Now, we had a few little things happen, but nothing really concrete. And I remember I got home and I had a colossal case of chigger bites, and I had a couple of tick bites. And I had a tick that, I didn't get the whole tick. Its head was under this, and I was miserable. Plus, it was really hot. And I remember I
Miserable.
told my wife, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I said miserable. I've been there.
Yeah,
Hey, that's
yeah,
that's how we
it's terrible.
research in miserable conditions. Makes it more
So,
fun.
yeah, and so I tell my wife, I'm thinking I'm not going back out in the field unless it's cold. But I told her, I said, you know what? They may have been here at one time, but I don't think they're here now. They may have been out at Brown Springs at one time, but I don't think they're there anymore. But I do believe, so I think they're in Longpool, Arkansas, because I've been there, and that place actually got creeped out both times I've been there. So I tell her this, and it's Sunday after I'd gotten home. Tuesday night, and you watch the skies probably. I don't know if you remember 2018, but Mars was real close to the Earth, and it was just really beautiful that summer. And so I walked outside, and I was looking up at Mars, and I walked around my wife's car, and I set off the motion detector, and the light came on. So I'm looking up at Mars, and I get movement out of my left eye, and I look down, and this thing's running. It's about 80 yards from me, ran about 100 yards across the front of me. And it ran. There's a Choctaw church across the road. I own about an acre across the road that I keep kind of rough, but there's a churchyard on the other side of it that's got a couple of vapor lights. And so this guy, he was silhouetted perfectly. And I knew the second I saw him what I was looking at, and I was shocked, because I thought, well, maybe I'll see one in the woods or something, but I didn't think I'd just see one run across. And he was only visible for about 4 seconds, but he went 100 yards in that 4 seconds. I've never seen anything run that fast. And the weirdest thing about it, and I want to always impress this on people, because I don't see how he could run that fast without pumping his arms, but he did not pump his arms. He had like a surfer's stance. And I watched him run, and then he leaped, and I thought he was leaping over my neighbor's fence. And that was it. He was gone. And I also remember my dog Opie was with me. He's a lab Australian Shepherd mix, and he barks at everything. I mean, if there's deer over in that churchyard, he barks at. If there's hogs, if there's just a person walking over there, he's barking. And he's right next to me. I mean, he's right up against my leg. And I look down at him, and his tongue's hanging out, and he looks all happy, and his tail's wagging. And I thought, that's weird. I thought he might, that he didn't bark, or I knew he saw it too, And I always wondered if that was his buddy or something, because he goes and runs the woods in the morning. And I'm wondering if maybe he's encountered one or not.
Oh, yeah. They may be buddies. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know either.
We know how they can be dangerous having a dog around a Sasquatch now.
Yeah.
Right?
So, right. So I've seen this thing, and now I'm all excited, and I run to the house and, throw the door open. Monica, I saw a Sasquatch. And she came up and looked at me. He's like, oh, John. And I'm like, no, seriously, I did it. She's looking in my eyes. She goes, okay, I believe you. And I said, well, nobody else is going to. And so I was on a Bigfoot group on Facebook, and I told them, hey, I just had a sighting. It was quick, just the details. I didn't realize Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles was on there. And so he called me or got me on Facebook, private message, wanted me to be on his show. And I'm like, Wes, it was 4 seconds tops. It didn't scare me because it wasn't running at me. Now, had it been running at me, yeah, I would have been scared. But
You're
and I
right.
didn't really feel like I should be on the show, you know. But he brought me on, and that was my first time being on a podcast. And I didn't mention that I'd written a book. And then it was funny. Anytime I was speaking about my book, I didn't mention that I'd seen Sasquatch. I've seen a Sasquatch because I was like, I don't want to be that guy, you know. And I did mention both together once, and the guy goes, you're just trying to sell books. And I was like, well, yeah, I am trying to sell books, but my book had nothing to do with what I saw. So I kept it
Right.
quiet for years. In fact, it was this year that I just started opening up about it, where I would say it publicly, like on a podcast. Even 2019, I was one of the speakers at the conference. I was like the warm up act for Van Halen. I was like the garage band for Ron Moorhead and some of those guys. So
Hey, that's not a bad gig though.
no, it was
That
a good
sounds
gig, and sold some
be
books.
an
But
honor, right?
yeah, but I stood up there and spoke for an hour, and I was wanting to tell that story, and I just said nope, I'm not ready, you know. So I didn't tell it. And the funny thing was, after all this, and Monica wanting to look in my eyes, and oh John, about 3 months later, she has a sighting in the same general area, but she had two other people with her that saw it, so she came out a little better, and she just
Yeah.
saw it for a few seconds too. It was walking away back from the direction which it had come from when I saw it. So that
Wow.
was my first encounter here with anything like that, and it was really cool. I mean, I'll always remember what it looked like, but you know, people say, "Well, what color?" I'm like, "Well, it looked like a mottled gray, but it was, you know, it was kind of silhouetted with vapor lights. I really couldn't get a color or anything."
Yeah. Well, and there's just such a stigma to it. And just like talking about the small towns and how people don't really want to talk about it, and everybody's trying to come up with an explanation as to what they saw, and it has to be something different. It has to be a bear, right? It has to
Yeah,
be a gigantic football player got lost in the woods or something. I mean, it has to be something, anything but a Bigfoot, anything but a Sasquatch. um
exactly. And you know what's weird is when it leaped, it was in that churchyard, and not only is there a churchyard bordering my property, a little Choctaw church, there's a cemetery there, Choctaw Cemetery, and then my neighbor's properties over there. So I went and looked the next morning. I assumed it had jumped the fence on my neighbor's property, but it ended way before that. And there was a big pile of rocks, and we grow rocks out here and logs
yeah.
there. And I think that's what he leaked. And he would have came down right in that little cemetery there. And of course, it was August and really dry, and I didn't find a print or anything. Funny thing is, it just my the people that lived in this house before we bought it, we met them, and the lady, real sweet lady. In fact, she's opened a Bigfoot museum down in Tallahena now. She told us about how she would see them, and she claimed that they would talk to her telepathically,
Hmm.
and she said they were no threat. And I was kind of thinking, well, okay, they're not a threat. You know, that one ran obviously, and I always thought, well, he ran because he was afraid I'd see it, and I thought if it would just stood still, I probably wouldn't have seen it because I was so busy looking up at the stars. The only reason I
Yeah.
saw it is just the movements. You know, my eye detected movement. And of course, I looked down and bang, there it was. And it wasn't very big, Jessica, maybe 7 feet tall, but it wasn't that big, bulky. It was like, it looked like a track star, like a hurdler or something like that.
Yeah.
It was really thinner. But then one night, and it was right after that, my wife was out. We got a fire pit out on the east side of the house. You know, it's a real nice place to sit and have a fire. Well, she was talking to one of her daughters who's in El Paso, and I came out, and we had Christmas lights on the house, and the leaves had dropped. So my neighbor to the east, I was getting light from his vapor light, which you don't get in the summer. And I just happened to walk out, and we got two enclosed sheds, and then like a carport type structure out there. And this massive black thing just walks across the opening of that car behind it. I thought at first it was in the carport, and I wasn't even really sure I saw it because I just saw it swing by. But that scared me, and I remember I said, "Monica, get in the house." And I guess my
Yeah.
voice scared her too because she didn't argue. She went straight in the house. and I grabbed a gun and a spotlight, and I went out there, and I couldn't see anything. You know, there was grass pushed down, but I couldn't tell if it was footprint because deer lay all around our property at night. So you never know what's pushing the grass down. So that
Yeah.
was kind of the second thing that happened. And then that same month, this is my last Bigfoot story. I'll get it out of the way. I was a copier tech for years, and I would cover 250, 300 miles a day. And the older I got, the more coffee I was having to drink to stay awake. It was getting really hard. And so anytime I've had to come from the South, if I've been working in Texas or parts of Arkansas, I come up Indian Trail Highway from a little town called Bethel. Well, there's a place you can pull off, and there's kind of a cliff because the coffee gets to you, and got to relieve yourself.
Right.
So it's raining. It's December, and it's pouring, but I couldn't make it home. It's only 11 more miles, but I couldn't make it. So I pulled in there. We're always going to stand at the cliff, and I look down to my right, and there's a footprint right next to me, and it's just filling with water. I mean, the rainwater just running into it, and I'm like looking at that, and I remember saying, "Okay, dummy, you got to remember where you live and start paying attention." So I didn't.
Yeah.
A couple of months later, I'm stopped again, but now it's around March and the leaves are starting to bud and it's getting a little thicker. And I get this just tremendous whistle just off to my right. And it was a human whistle, but it was at the volume of like a steam whistle on a train, an old train or a boat. I mean, I jumped out of my skin. I just went straight to the car, got in, and went home.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I never again, don't stop there again. Enough of that. So a couple of months later, I'm coming home again, and the engine in my car developed an oil leak. So I stopped in this little town in Arkansas, and I sprayed it off at the car wash. Well, I didn't realize that I'd gotten oil on my windshield wipers. So I'm going back up the same mountain. I'm in the same place, and it started raining. So I turned on the wipers. Well, it's just smearing oil. So I'm hitting the cleaner, and I'm
Oh no.
shut down about 5 miles an hour, and and the road's real windy, so I'm trying to be careful, and I'm hitting the thing. Finally, it clears, and when it clears, I see two legs under a pine tree, just maybe 20 feet in front of me. And then they just turned and walked in. So I sped up, and I rolled down the window, and I'm looking. Well, it's dark in the trees. I couldn't see anything, and whatever it was, it left. And I'm sitting there looking and, trying to will myself to see in the dark. And then I thought, remember your book, dummy, you're going to get hit in the head with a rock. So I just pulled up the window and went on home.
It's really wild that there's a lot of attacks and stuff that could really be real, and you hear a lot about Bigfoot attacks, Sasquatch attacks on people, and that's something that I've been really interested in lately. And so I'm a remote viewer, and so I've been remote viewing some incidences where there were people who claimed to be attacked by Bigfoot, just like kind of how you have in your book. And what I'm finding right now is that Bigfoot is a scapegoat a lot of times for crimes that humans commit. Okay.
Oh,
So
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. They're a great scapegoat, right? Because they're a mythological creature, which people know they're real. A lot of people do. And they're so big, and they have a stigma around them. And so, hey, I mean, it could be the government trying to cover things up and making people think a Bigfoot did it. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually just remote viewed a case out of Russia, Soviet Russia, back in 1959,
I know
called I can't pronounce it. I'm having the Dyatlov pass incident, and through my data, I was seeing that it's more kind of military and like a government cover up. But for all these years, people have assumed that it was the Russian Yeti attack, or some kind of UFO thing, or something very supernatural. And I think there was a little bit of an element of that, according to my data, but it was mostly basically a Yeti being blamed for something the government did.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story too. That's one of my favorite ones. The Ape Canyon story is one of my favorite. The Siege of Honobia is Honobia. See, there I go.
Honobia.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
It looks like Honobia. So that I'm so glad that you told me the right way to say it. I love that. Honobia. Yeah. It's It's interesting because there's a lot of attacks. And speaking of Brown Springs, Oklahoma, I was asked by Tex from Texas Front Porch to do a remote viewing target from Brown Springs. And it was from the 1980s, and there was a couple who was murdered there, brutally murdered.
I know the
And
story.
do you know the story? So you're
I know the
familiar with it.
story. Yes.
Well, I actually remote viewed that. And there was speculation that that was a Sasquatch that did that. And so we were thinking, well, maybe it was one of those real mean Genesquas. And through my data, I saw that it was not a Sasquatch, but it was humans. That really evil humans did that to those people. So yeah, another case, another, you can just check it off the list. Another case where it wasn't a Bigfoot.
That was the 80s, right? Early 80s.
1980s, yeah.
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 You would think we'd had better crime scene investigating, but DNA, they hadn't hit their stride with DNA yet and things like that. But
yeah,
of course, if they had found unidentifiable DNA, a species, couldn't have
right.
identified the species, they would have said a guy did it anyway,
Right. Well, I don't think that they actually ever came out with any kind of information on it. I think they kind of closed it down for some reason. The law enforcement and the investigators did. So it left everyone wondering, and rumors started spreading, And so that's kind of how this happens, and how this works. People speculate, okay, and so stories get made, and there's a lot of reaching, and it is an easy culprit, a big old Sasquatch, So I don't know.
Yeah, I used it for a culprit in my book. There were some guys came up, didn't believe that, what had happened. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of, I'm actually going to be doing a little show on Friday nights just for fun on my YouTube channel, and Tex from Texas Front Porch and all his crew are going to be helping me out with this, where I'm going to be remote viewing paranormal attacks.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just to see, because I think that we're going to see a pattern of it being a Bigfoot scapegoat. That's what I'm thinking. But we're going to find out. So, yeah. Well, I wanted to talk to you about your Air Force experience and your fascination with UFOs. And I wanted to know if you have any experience with UFOs while you were in the Air Force.
No, not really. One night while I was stationed in Texas, it was kind of weird. There was 4 of us, and we saw something hovering over the runway. This was at Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin. And I was a young airman. I hadn't been in maybe just a little over a year. But we noticed all the military police trucks went flying out to the runway. And this thing was big. It looked kind of like a blimp, but there was no noise. You couldn't hear any engine noise. And we were on the flight line, right there where the runway is. And it was just silent and sitting there. And I remember this light shined down out of it. And then it just moved off, and kind of moved off slowly. And then we couldn't see it anymore because it was just a dark spot. It was the only reason you could see it was because of picking up reflections from light on the ground. So really didn't know what it was. When the military police came back, we asked one of the MPs, hey, what was that down there? And he's like, what was what? And we said, the thing hovering over the runway. And he's like, hey, you need to shut up or you're going to end up overseas. Well, our squadron was closing down. We were all going overseas anyway. So like, oh, well, don't tell us what you see. And he wouldn't say anything and drove off. And that was about it in the Air Force. I just, of course, I was in England when the Rendlesham Forest thing happened, but, that happened like 65 miles away. And, but no, I never really saw anything UFO wise in the Air Force. It wasn't until, now I did see a UFO as about a 15, 16-year-old when I was a teenager. And then I've had a couple of experiences since being from the Air Force. Actually, they've occurred since I started writing these books. And, at first I'm thinking, are you seeing things? Are you seeing things because you want to see things? But I'm thinking I'm just more aware now because of things I have read. I mean, it's like you start parting the veil and you start seeing some stuff on the other side, you know. So
Yeah, that happened to me when I started having experience with alien abduction stuff. You know, I started reading books about it, and I had ETs show up at my house. So it's almost as if I manifested it, and I feel like that is part of it, is that we're manifesting these experiences. But it's also we're just being more aware of it. I mean, who's to say those things weren't right in front of us the whole time? We just didn't see it.
you know, you hit the nail on the head there too with manifest. We
Yeah.
probably can manifest. You know, there's I'm not going to say the creatures because I don't want to upset my Choctaw friends in the area because,
Hmm.
but there's a couple of things they won't mention because they say mentioning them automatically brings you to that
Yeah,
yeah, the attention of that being or whatever it is. So
it
yeah,
does. It's like a little radar, right?
yeah, it really is. It's an interesting theory.
Wow. Well, I hope you don't have any visits in your bedroom late at night. Because we're talking about this tonight. Maybe we should stop talking about this because I don't want to visit either.
Yeah.
That's really interesting though. And that's something that I found very interesting in your book series too, is that you really connect different paranormal things, all the different aspects of, I know that when we have Bigfoot activity, we usually have orbs and we have UFOs out in the field and we have ghost spirits, trickster spirits. We had a portal that opened up that my team documented. I've got at least two of my team members in the chat tonight. Daryl and Bob are here, and Bob actually walked into the portal. Okay, and
Are you
Daryl was
kidding?
there. Yeah, and so
I'm fearless.
it's wild. Like we have experienced some really interesting stuff, my team and I. Okay, but you really kind of bring that aspect into the book, and so it shows me that you have a very open mind with all of this, and I really appreciate that, and I think that's I was on the edge of my seat reading your book, and I suggest everyone go out and purchase the Relics series by John Vandeventer. Everybody, please go get it. It's actually free on Kindle right now, right, John?
Yeah, through the
Yeah,
weekend. Yeah, first book
for the
is
weekend.
pretty. No, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
the second book for you on Kindle. My bad.
Yeah. Well, if you're in the UK, which we probably have some people from the UK listening tonight, it's free there through Sunday, and it's free here in the US on Amazon on Kindle through tomorrow night. So you guys, please, check it out, but buy the book. It is so amazing, and yeah, I just really love it, John. So, but
Thank
yeah,
you.
I like how you incorporate it all. And now your second book, I haven't gotten to the second book yet, but it looks really interesting because you have a big old UFO on the cover with the
Yeah.
Sasquatch. So
The
give us
funny
a little
thing.
preview of what's going on with your second series.
Okay, well, in the second series, it's the same characters from the first book. Uh, it's 2 years after the fact, and all of a sudden there's a reintroduction of events happening. You know, paranormal events, and they're not just centered around Bigfoot. They're getting like the Men in Black phenomenon, UFO phenomenon, and so I'm not going to give away how I tied it all together. Some people may agree, some don't, but I put a letter to the reader in front of the book just saying, "Hey, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, just trying to tell you a story and entertain you." So that's all I'm trying to do. But I bring in other aspects. I needed another character. I brought in he's in his 90s. He's a Choctaw gentleman, and he was a Navy fighter pilot. He tried to get into World War II. He wanted to make it into World War II, but the war ended just before he got over there. But so he was trained and stuff, and he spent 20 years, 21 years, I think, in the Navy flying fighters. Well, he's my character that he participates in Operation High Jump down in Antarctica in 1947.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
he goes to Roswell. He interviews Kenneth Arnold after his initial sighting, goes to Roswell. And then once again, he's caught up in a UFO thing in Vietnam on the Australian cruiser, or it was a destroyer, Hobart. Now, they say the damage it took was from Sparrow missiles fired by U.S. Air Force F-4 Phantoms. But there's another side to the story. And the funny thing, this UFO part of the story was all over the place 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, or about a year ago. And when I was wanting to use it for the book, all of a sudden, all these episodes had dried up. They're gone. And it took me forever to find anything on it. In fact, the videos are all gone. I can find printed material on it, on the alleged UFO encounter. But anyway, he brings that aspect into the book, and then he gets out of the Navy in the 60s, returns to Honobia, and he's actually mentioned in the first book. You just probably didn't recognize him, but when he comes in, you'll know who he was. So I won't say any more about that.
Okay. Oh, you're going to leave me hanging, huh?
He's kind of like an Obi-Wan character.
Oh, yeah? Like Star Wars kind of stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. Listen, I'm a trained Jedi because, with the remote viewing stuff, we're Jedi. So I'm going to be able to relate to that real well. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I just met a gentleman this past week. I was at dinner for my sister's birthday, and there's no coincidences, like I said in the very beginning. And the gentleman that was sitting by me, who I did not know, he turned around and started talking to me, and he was friends with my mom, and he said something about remote viewing. And my mom said, "Oh, Jessica's a remote viewer." And turns out he served in Vietnam. Okay. And he had just written a book about remote viewing. Okay. So he wrote a book about remote viewing, and I posted it on my social media. So if anybody wants to check that out, y'all go to my Instagram page at the Cryptid and check out the remote viewing book I posted on Wednesday night. But he was telling me a story about the rock ape, okay, in Vietnam. Okay, so he was talking about how he didn't even know what that was. He didn't know that there were like a Sasquatch-like being in Vietnam or anything. He said he was, first of all, he was scared to death because he was a young guy, a teenager, going to war, in Vietnam in the jungles. And they had what they called the rock ape, throwing rocks at them and diving over their heads and stuff at night. And he just thought it was a monkey. He had no idea that it was an actual Sasquatch.
Yeah,
in Vietnam,
the BC and NBA was enough. You had to deal with Sasquatch too. I can't imagine.
Could you imagine?
No,
just that extra element thrown in there. I mean, hey, it sounds like
problems. Yeah. Now they want to throw that.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah, being scared to death at night and having a Sasquatch throwing rocks at you, in addition to all the other stuff going on. So, but yeah, there's they're all over the world, right? And hey, that would make a good book series, actually, John. The rock apes.
Well, I may get them. You never know.
Hey, you can do a whole new series. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do have another series kicking off soon as Relics 3 is done. And I'm also working on, and I'm also working on a youth series. The first one that happens in Tallahassee, it's a Sasquatch story, and it's called Shadow Chasers. And it's going to be a smaller book, of course, and, it's written for 10 to 14-year-olds, so it's not going to be as graphic or the violence and stuff. But yeah, I'm going to be putting those out along with the other Relics, and then I'm going to start on the second series after Relics 3, which will include characters from the books you're reading now. So
nice. I love that you're going to be incorporating stories for the younger crowd and the younger generations, because I know that's something my son would absolutely love to read. He's into reading, looking for books on ghosts and Sasquatch and UFOs, just like I did when I was a kid, and probably you did too. And I think that's a common thread for a lot of us, is that we were all into all the paranormal stuff as kids, and look at us now. So yeah, I think that's the great market.
Soon as that first Shadow Chasers book is out, I'll let you know, and we'll hook your young man up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, hey, you sent me your books, and you are so kind. You sent me the Honobia hat. Wait, pronounce Honobia. Honobia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get it right one day, John. I promise. Honobia. It sounds like something in this a word that we say in the South. Okay, Honobia. But yeah, thank you so much for sending me that. You are you're an amazing guest.
There's I guess it's a Oklahoma thing. Lauren I got a hat from her at the. She has a show similar to yours, and in fact, you two remind me of each other. But she's Oklahoma based, and I had her. She gave me a hat back during the conference, and she signed it for me. And I said, "Okay, well, now that you sign, I can only wear it when I'm on her show." So I did. I was on her show about 2 weeks ago, and I wore that hat, and she recognized it as soon as the cameras came on. So yes, I think it's kind of an Oklahoma thing, is hat swapping. So
Yeah. Hey, I like it. I'm gonna have to get me some hats so I can swap them out and send you
there you
one
go.
too. Because now I owe you. I definitely owe you. Yeah. And, and it's actually kind of a bittersweet night tonight because this is my last show on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, John. So I am just really honored that you are here with me tonight and talking about all the stuff that I love and Bigfoot, UFOs, aliens. You even got a little bit of mentions of ghosts and stuff in your book. So, yeah.
I can't believe I got to be your last guest, or even got on. I was just thrilled to get the invitation. And then when you told me you were moving on and I was your last guest, I was like, wow, that was a stroke of luck.
Yeah, well, it's bittersweet. It's just there's some other projects and things like that, and I don't want to leave KGRA, but it has been such a wonderful experience here, and to be able to bring on all of my guests and my teammates from all of my Bigfoot research teams, and it's just been a blessing. It really has been a blessing from the very beginning. So, yeah. Well, tell everybody how they can find you and find your books.
Okay, well, the books are available on Amazon, but the easiest way to find the links is go to my website. It's www.relics with an S, book without an S, singular.com. That's relicsbook.com. And there's a link to each format of the book. You can get paperback, hardback, Kindle, and don't have audio yet. Working on that, but that's an expense haven't got around to yet. But yeah, if you want paperback, Kindle, or hardcover, we got you covered. Just go to www.relicsbook.com.
Yes. And everybody, please go get the book. Okay. It is well worth it. This is it's definitely kept me on the edge of my seat. Okay, ever since I got the book, and I'm going to be starting the next book probably in the morning as soon as I wake up, because it has been I've been really busy lately. I've been very busy, but yeah, I want to thank everybody for all your beautiful comments tonight, and thank you guys. Y'all are like the best audience in the entire world, and everybody, just you guys have become my friends and my family, and it just means the world to me. And so I hope you guys will keep on subscribing to my YouTube channel, and watching all the projects I'm going to be working on. And yeah, it's going to it's just going to be a continuation. You guys, y'all just y'all stay tuned. Okay. And John, thank you so much for being here tonight. I can't wait to read more of your books. It's got to be just a huge success for you, because everybody in the Bigfoot field, I can tell you, is going to be able to relate to that book and all your books, because it's so
Well, thank
real.
you. It was an honor to make it on your show, and I'm so glad I got the invitation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, everybody, this is my final walk through the portal tonight. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I will see y'all on the other side. Everybody take care, and I will see y'all soon. All right.